About 40,000 years ago, a human species disappeared from Earth. There was no final battlefield. There was no single layer of ash burying them all. There was no clear evidence pinpointing the exact moment of their end. We are left only with broken bones, stone tools, climate traces trapped in ice, segments of ancient genes, and the greatest mystery in the history of human evolution. Why did the Neanderthals disappear? Were they replaced by Homo sapiens through violence? Did the climate cause their world to collapse entirely? Or did they not disappear at all, but rather have their biological legacy integrated into our own? This event has left one of the largest voids in the paleontological record, sparking countless scientific debates. For a long time, popular culture and early academia assumed that Neanderthals were crude, stooped, unintelligent creatures that were inevitably bound to give way to the superior Homo sapiens in the struggle for survival. However, a series of archaeological excavations and ancient deoxyribonucleic acid analysis in recent decades have completely shattered this prejudice. Evidence shows that they were master hunters, possessed sophisticated Mousterian stone toolkits, practiced symbolic thinking, crafted jewelry from seashells and eagle talons, cared for the sick, buried their dead, and skillfully controlled fire. Therefore, their extinction cannot be explained by a simple mathematical problem of natural selection. It is a complex evolutionary case with too many suspects appearing at a single point in history, requiring a multidimensional perspective. Studies such as those by Vason and colleagues published in the journal Nature note that the cause of the Neanderthals' disappearance remains a subject of profound debate, with no single factor sufficient to explain the total collapse of a species that had dominated the Eurasian continent for hundreds of thousands of years. Instead, evidence points to a multi-stressor model. Factors such as extreme climate change, competition for resources with newly arriving Homo sapiens groups, demographic risks due to small and fragmented populations, inbreeding, and the emergence of new pathogens, and the process of interbreeding with modern humans have all interwoven to form a network of pressure. This is not a story of a loser, but a tragic demonstration of how even the most resilient biological system can be broken when the environment changes at a speed exceeding its capacity to adapt. To truly understand the disappearance of the Neanderthals, one must first dismantle the myth that this was an overnight event, where an entire species was wiped out by an instantaneous catastrophe. In reality, the answer to the question, "Why did the Neanderthals disappear?" lies in a prolonged and complex process, much like solving a case where the clues are scattered across millennia. The history of human evolution notes that the Neanderthals had an incredibly successful existence, spanning more than 350,000 years. They conquered and mastered a vast territory, from the Atlantic coasts of the Iberian Peninsula across the frozen steppes of Europe, reaching the Altai Mountains in Central Asia and even Western Asia. They were master survivors of the Ice Age, adapting remarkably well to the most extreme climatic conditions. The milestone of 40,000 years ago is often used by scientists to mark the absence of fossils with distinct Neanderthal morphological characteristics. However, this is the end point of a decline that began much earlier. Instead of a simultaneous collapse, we see a picture of gradual geographical shrinkage and population thinning. Like an ancient kingdom eroded from the borders toward the center, the territory of the Neanderthals contracted over thousands of years. This decline did not occur uniformly. Depending on the region, some Neanderthal populations disappeared very early due to local ecological pressures. Meanwhile, in refugia with more favorable microclimates, such as the caves in Gibraltar or southern France, some small groups held on resiliently. They maintained their lifestyle, stone tools, and culture for thousands more years, like the final oases of a world slowly sinking into the past before falling completely silent. The complexity of this timeline is further emphasized when Homo sapiens, our direct ancestors, began migrating into Europe more than 45,000 years ago. This initiated a period of coexistence and ecological overlap lasting at least 5,000 years, equivalent to approximately 250 generations between the two intelligent human species on the same continent. This period was long enough to allow for profound interactions, from competition for territory and food sources to cultural exchange and even interbreeding between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. A key study published in the journal Nature in 2024 analyzed ancient DNA and further reinforced evidence of this prolonged coexistence, refuting the hypothesis of a sudden replacement. Genome analyses show that the most significant interbreeding likely occurred between 45,000 and 50,000 years ago, right during the period of ecological overlap in Europe. This paints a picture of complex interaction, where Homo sapiens may have acted as a more effective competitive pressure rather than necessarily being a destructive invader. The cause of the Neanderthal extinction was not simply a war, but a persistent competition for survival. Ultimately, the Neanderthals did not fall off the stage of history in a single moment. They faded through many lands, many generations, under the weight of many accumulated pressures. They were like a great fire that once burned brightly across the Eurasian continent, but then, starved of oxygen and resources, gradually flickered out in small spots in remote places before being completely extinguished in the night of time. One of the core factors that extinguished that flame was the living environment, a colossal stage whose rules had changed ruthlessly. The weather context during the final phase of Neanderthal existence was not a static picture. The Pleistocene epoch at that time was characterized by extremely intense and nearly unpredictable climatic fluctuations. On a geological scale, glacial cycles advanced and retreated at a dizzying speed, constantly reshaping the ecological landscape. Dense temperate forests, where Neanderthals once hid to ambush prey, could quickly retreat before vast, cold, and barren steppes. Water sources froze, and the familiar migratory routes of large herds, such as mammoths or woolly rhinoceroses, were completely disrupted, forcing groups of hunters to constantly adapt or face starvation. Admittedly, the Neanderthal body structure was a masterpiece of evolution adapted to the cold. A wide and deep rib cage, acting like a large barrel, helped warm inhaled air. Short and stocky limbs helped minimize body surface area to retain heat. And a large nose could have acted as an efficient radiator. They were born for the Ice Age. However, they were by no means immune to the collapse of the food chain. A supreme hunter, no matter how strong and intelligent, could not survive if there was no longer prey to hunt. As the vegetation changed, herbivores were forced to migrate or die out, and the Neanderthal survival system, which relied heavily on protein from meat, began to shake at its very roots. Environmental instability was pushed to the extreme around 39,000 to 40,000 years ago, when one of the greatest geological disasters of the Quaternary period occurred, the Campanian Ignimbrite supereruption in what is now Italy. This was no ordinary eruption. The terrifying blast tore through the Earth's crust, releasing a tremendous amount of energy and pumping hundreds of cubic kilometers of ash, pumice, and sulfur dioxide gas all the way into the stratosphere. A giant shroud of haze then spread across Eastern Europe and parts of Asia, likely obscuring sunlight for months, perhaps even years, causing a phenomenon known as a volcanic winter. Its consequences for the ecosystem were extremely severe. A sudden drop in sunlight and temperature reduced vegetation on a large scale, leading to the depletion of food sources for herbivores. For Neanderthal groups already struggling to survive in resource-scarce areas, this was a death blow to their almost sole source of protein. Scientists today are very cautious and emphasize that this eruption should not be viewed as the sole cause of extinction. However, we cannot deny its compounding effect. For Neanderthal populations already on the verge of decline, dispersed, and having to compete for survival, an environmental disaster of this scale was very likely one of the final pressures that pushed them closer to their limits of endurance. Among all the hypotheses regarding why the Neanderthals disappeared, there is one explanation that does not require war, disease, or a catastrophic natural disaster. It is as cold and precise as a mathematical equation, and as grim as a biological law. It is a demographic issue. This hypothesis is emerging as one of the most compelling explanations for this pivotal event in the history of human evolution. Population models, built on the density of archaeological sites and computer algorithms, have painted a troubling picture. The total number of Neanderthals coexisting across the vast Eurasian continent at any given time may have only hovered in the range of a few tens of thousands of individuals. This is an extremely modest number. They did not live in crowded tribes or concentrated settlements. Instead, they were dispersed into very small hunter-gatherer groups, typically consisting of only 10 to 30 people. Each group wandered through a valley or a forest, potentially separated from the nearest group by hundreds of kilometers. Connection and the exchange of members between groups were exceptionally rare. This fragmented and isolated population structure created a serious biological consequence. Ancient deoxyribonucleic acid analyses from Neanderthal remains have revealed a sad truth: prolonged inbreeding across many generations. When individuals in a small group can only find mates within their own group, the genetic diversity of the population declines rapidly. This leads to their genome accumulating an increasing number of harmful mutations. Consequently, fertility decreases, the immune system weakens, and children born may be less adaptable to the harsh environment of the Ice Age. With each passing generation, the genetic burden becomes heavier, eroding their vitality from within. This is one of the causes of Neanderthal extinction that modern science is focused on researching. The research team of scientist Krist Vaessen and colleagues used complex models to simulate an ecological principle called the Allee effect. This principle indicates that when a population size falls below a critical threshold, the survival of the entire group is directly threatened. Individuals face difficulty in finding mates, lack enough people to coordinate in hunting large prey that provide significant energy, and lack enough healthy adults to protect children and the elderly from predators such as cave bears or wolves. In such a world, the random fluctuations of daily life can become life or death risks. The sudden passing of a few women of reproductive age, a skilled hunter getting injured, or a group leader possessing knowledge about winter water sources dying can push an entire group to the brink of collapse. This hypothesis for Neanderthal extinction proves a harsh truth of nature. A species does not necessarily have to be destroyed by swords or enemies. Sometimes it is simply because the population is too small, too lonely, and too fragile to recover after a long winter with insufficient food. They did not lose in a battle. They simply ran out of the resources to continue the struggle for survival. As the Neanderthal survival system began to waver, a new pressure emerged: the rise of Homo sapiens. Although there is no evidence of a systematic genocide, with battlefields piled high with bones, the arrival of our ancestors was a detrimental factor to the already precarious world of the Neanderthals. The confrontation between these two intelligent human species did not necessarily take place with spears and javelins. It was a silent, persistent, and perhaps even more ruthless competition, spanning thousands of years in the form of ecological exclusion, where both species targeted similar resources in the same increasingly harsh environment. In this competition, Homo sapiens possessed advantages that, though small, created a massive difference when accumulated over many generations. The first was dietary flexibility. While Neanderthals were master hunters specialized in large game such as mammoths, bison, and reindeer, our ancestors had a much more diverse menu. They knew how to harvest fish from icy rivers, hunt birds and small animals, and gather nuts and plants. This flexibility acted as a safety buffer, helping them survive through periods when large herds migrated or declined due to climate change, a scenario that caused severe crises for Neanderthal groups. The second advantage lay in social organizational capacity. Archaeological evidence shows that Homo sapiens formed networks for exchanging information and materials over incredible distances. Strings of seashells from the coast found hundreds of kilometers inland, or tools made from volcanic glass transported from distant volcanoes are testaments to a highly connected society. This network was not just for trading goods. It was a cross-support system, allowing groups to help one another in times of hardship, share information about new resources, or migrate to the lands of relatives when their old homes became barren. In contrast, Neanderthal groups seemed to live more in isolation, with most materials they used being of local origin within a radius of a few dozen miles. This isolation made them more vulnerable to local shocks. Technology was also a differentiating factor. Homo sapiens developed more effective long-range weapons, such as the spear thrower and possibly even primitive bows and arrows. These tools allowed them to hunt from a safe distance, minimizing the risk of injury while facing dangerous beasts. This was in complete contrast to the ambush-style, close-quarters hunting of the Neanderthals, a courageous but extremely dangerous tactic, as evidenced by the very high rate of bone injuries found on their fossils. Safer hunting meant fewer skilled hunters lost, less energy expended, and higher hunting efficiency. Ultimately, all the aforementioned advantages resonated, leading to a demographic superiority. The ability to recover population numbers more quickly, potentially higher birth rates, and better child survival rates helped Homo sapiens groups gradually increase in number. They slowly filled fertile valleys, occupied the warmest caves, and naturally pushed the smaller, more isolated Neanderthal groups into resource-poor frontier lands. Thus, Homo sapiens did not necessarily have to be an aggressive invader. They were simply a new ecological pressure, a more efficient competitor for resources, acting as the final element that tipped the already extremely fragile balance of survival for the Neanderthals. In the story of the Neanderthal disappearance, there exists a profound paradox. They vanished from Earth as a human population with a distinct morphological and cultural identity, but genetically, they were not completely wiped out. This fact was once beyond imagination until the ancient deoxyribonucleic acid revolution, featuring the groundbreaking work of Svante Pääbo, revealed a shocking chapter of history. Genetic analysis from tens of thousands of years old bone samples has proven that our Homo sapiens ancestors, upon encountering Neanderthals at historical crossroads in the Middle East and Europe, did not just compete. Between them occurred interbreeding, producing fertile hybrid generations. The consequences of this hybridization process are incredibly profound and still present today. The majority of modern people with non-African roots, from Europeans and Asians to Native Americans, carry in their bodies about 1% to 2% of the genome inherited directly from Neanderthals. This is not a minor legacy. It is living proof of those historical encounters, a biological mark passed down through thousands of generations and present in the deoxyribonucleic acid of billions of people today. Recent genetic studies have redrawn the timeline of this event with astonishing precision. Analyses published in prestigious scientific journals in 2024, based on the genomes of ancient Homo sapiens individuals, show that this mixin was not a single incident. It was a process of interaction that may have begun approximately 45,000 to 49,000 years ago, coinciding with the first waves of modern humans leaving Africa. Synthesized data also indicate that this phase of interaction and mating took place continuously over many generations, with the peak of hybridization occurring around 47,000 years ago, leaving an indelible genetic legacy in our lineage. This discovery forces us to confront a philosophical question. If the Neanderthal genetic legacy is still alive and functioning within us, can it be said that they are truly extinct? Or rather, has a part of them been assimilated and dissolved into the immense demographic torrent of Homo sapiens, a form of survival that no one had ever predicted? This is a complex debate about the definition of extinction when the boundaries between species become blurred. Regardless of the answer, one truth can be cautiously affirmed. Neanderthals have disappeared from the map of paleoanthropology as a distinct species with a characteristic culture. But they have not completely vanished into thin air. They have found a final sanctuary, a form of immortality that is incomplete but real, which is within the cell nuclei of the very human species that replaced them. In natural history, whenever two populations of organisms that have been geographically isolated for tens of thousands of years suddenly come into contact, an invisible but intense exchange takes place. It is not just an exchange of culture or genetic material, but a collision of microbial ecosystems. Homo sapiens, the humans who migrated out of Africa, carried with them a collection of bacteria, viruses, and parasites that had co-evolved with them in tropical environments. When the first waves of modern humans entered Europe and began encounters, whether hostile or peaceful, with the Neanderthals, they inadvertently became hosts carrying foreign pathogens. This is a scenario that the hypothesis of Neanderthal extinction cannot ignore. For Neanderthal groups who had adapted to the pathogens of the Eurasian Ice Age for hundreds of thousands of years, their immune systems were completely unprepared for these uninvited guests. Although direct evidence of disease from fossilized bones is extremely rare and difficult to identify, the hypothesis of pathogen attacks, or so-called virgin soil epidemics, is considered one of the plausible factors. Modern history has shown us the devastating power of this scenario when Europeans brought smallpox and measles to the Americas, causing the demographic collapse of indigenous civilizations. Similarly, an outbreak of diseases that caused only mild symptoms in Homo sapiens, such as the bacterium Helicobacter pylori causing stomach ulcers, the herpes virus causing cold sores, or even primitive strains of tuberculosis, could have become devastating pandemics, debilitating and claiming the lives of countless Neanderthal individuals. It is important to emphasize in human evolutionary history that the impact of disease is not necessarily linear, especially for a Neanderthal population network that was already very small, dispersed, and potentially weakened by inbreeding. An epidemic does not need to wipe out the entire population to lead to extinction. It only needs to weaken the health of key members in a small group, the best hunters, the fertile women. A sick hunter cannot hunt, causing the entire family to face starvation. A debilitated community will not be strong enough to withstand a harsh winter or compete for resources with healthier Homo sapiens groups. Disease, therefore, is seen as an invisible enemy, an element difficult to prove through archaeology, but likely a terrible catalyst, accelerating the collapse of a community already fragile under various other pressures. Looking at the big picture, modern science does not point to a single culprit for the disappearance of the Neanderthals. Instead, it resembles a domino effect, where a complex survival system collapses under multiple converging pressures. Imagine a sturdy house having to withstand too many storms at once. Unstable climate altered the hunting environment, forcing large animals, their primary food source, to migrate or decline. The already small and fragmented Neanderthal population made it difficult for them to recover from each shock, while inbreeding may have gradually weakened their genetic resistance over generations. And then, at that very fragile moment, a new factor appeared: groups of Homo sapiens migrating from Africa. There is no convincing evidence of a violent genocide, but our ancestors may have inadvertently become the final competing ecological pressure. With larger social networks, more flexible technology, and higher reproductive rates, Homo sapiens competed more effectively for increasingly scarce resources. The Neanderthal survival system, though resilient for hundreds of thousands of years, was ultimately pushed to its breaking point. Their decline is a lesson in the fragility of life, a reminder that even the rulers can fall when the laws of the world change too rapidly. So, was the arrival of Homo sapiens a conquest or merely a natural ecological replacement? This question remains open. But the story does not end entirely in tragedy. Before disappearing, some of the last Neanderthal groups managed to blend their genes into the newly arrived Homo sapiens. They did not vanish completely. They still exist, like a quiet echo in the deoxyribonucleic acid of billions of modern humans, an immortal legacy proving that another branch of humanity once walked on this planet.